Hey, welcome to The Human Variable. This episode is just aimed at sort of centering you on what this podcast is about and what sort of experience you're about to go through for these 5 episodes. I am Mark DeTusa. I'm a physics PhD student at UChicago, at least at the time of this recording, which is November 1st, 2021. So hopefully graduating somewhat soon. And with me I have...
Manaeha. I'm currently a third year at the college, double majoring in neuroscience and in public policy.
Cool. So I think for this episode, I wanted to just sort of come together and talk about, one, what is the human variable, and sort of why did we want to make these episodes in this podcast?
Yeah, I guess it's different for each of us hosts. But for me, I think the podcast is about exploring science policy and science policy communication and how different science matters, like specifically things that we scientists, researchers are doing actually very tangibly affects politics and our day-to-day lives. Contrary to sometimes, popular opinion that science is kind of like separate from politics, I think our episodes kind of show that it's all, pretty intertwined, both sides affecting each other. So yeah, I think the podcast really shows through various different fields, whether that be like environment, chemistry, anything like that we're more connected than we think.
Yeah, and I'd chime in that kind of the way I viewed making these episodes coming in as an aspiring science politicist, science policyist. In any case, I had begun to sort of understand, or trying to go on this journey myself to understand how policy informs science. And of course, policy is set by politicians and scientists. And I wanted to get a sense of how those two worlds talk to each other, how humans affect the science that we do. Because like you said, Manaeha, it's really easy, and there's kind of this view of, a scientist goes down into their lab in the basement or whatever, and they're kind of barricaded away from society, where they get to do their own little thing, and then they bring their little nugget of knowledge back up, and that's that. But of course, there's a lot of interplay between the two in terms of what science do we get to do, what science is even in vogue, how the science is done based upon social norms and these sorts of things. The scientist doesn't go into the lab as a blank slate. They're obviously bringing their own experiences into the thing that's informed by the world around them, and that's the human variable, literally. And so at least coming into making this podcast, I was hoping that these episodes help to show how science has been affected by politics in the past, as well as how scientists are responding to that, and how people have been trying to be more conscientious about this, both in the past and in the present, and hopefully in the future.
Yeah, for sure. To just go off of that, for me specifically, my goal with this podcast is to just maybe have some people who consider themselves scientists, or just, are involved in science, whether that be just like as a hobby or whatever it may be, to whatever extent, that politics isn't as far away as you might think. And I would actually encourage you and call you to participate as much as you can with the knowledge that you either are interested in or you're researching. Whatever it is, there is bound to be some sort of political connection, and to kind of cut that part off of your research might actually, hurt more than help, and could be an extreme disservice to what you're even studying. So yeah, I just encourage scientists all around to maybe just question the institutions that they're actually at, not just the research that they're doing, not have just a hypothesis in terms of that, but also question just the greater, why am I doing this, how do I communicate this, affecting people in their daily lives. Yeah.
And kind of not to bloviate on this topic, but just kind of to bring it all together. Even if you're not a scientist and listening to this, I hope that you get a better understanding of how scientists operate in their field.
For sure.
In a very real sense, rather than just thinking about, Einstein going in and thinking about the theory of relativity and, writing all these math equations, or, a chemist or a biologist or whatever, going into the lab and just kind of making magic happen. Hopefully these interviews and these topics and these discussions between us and the other co-hosts help you understand how science is done in a very real sense. So let's kind of to end this all off, let's talk about briefly these 5 episodes that we've helped make. So first off, we have Jeffrey Dewey. He helped helm 2 episodes on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual and how homosexuality was in the DSM until 1973, talking about the history of that, why it was in it, why it was removed. And we also talk about sort of we discuss it, but he helps interview and figure out sort of the contemporary effects of this decision, as well as some other issues that are still in the DSM.
And just to kind of add, in case anybody doesn't know, DSM is basically like the giant dictionary of every mental illness, mental condition that psychiatrists, psychologists have thus far, I guess, diagnosed. So it's constantly changing, and so that's why at one point homosexuality was in that. And then we go on to another. Our third episode is about environmental racism, in which first I kind of get a background on what that is generally in the U.S. as a whole, and then a bit more specifically grounded in Chicago and different, because Chicago is actually a pretty big city where a lot of different things have happened related to environmental racism. And then I kind of finish it off talking to an actual activist on the ground who lives and breathes environmental racism and kind of get a perspective on what it's like to do the work that she does. And then the episode after that, we had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Abhilash Mishra and Dr. Aaron Mertz, who wrote a paper about science communication and about their recent initiatives to create like these centers across the country to spread science and make it just more accessible to people that might not have had that access prior. So yeah, we kind of get an inside view on, why should we do science communication? What's the point? And how do we kind of build that accessibility?
And to kind of bring it all home, because all those episodes are, the third or fourth episode is a little bit more general, but we talk about sociology and psychology and the environment, but to kind of talk about science in a more general sense instead of the ones that definitely have more of a human connection. The last episode, I interviewed Dr. Naomi Oreskes about her recent edition of her book, Why Trust Science, which talks about why science as an institution is something that we can trust. And she makes a really salient point about how it's tied, and part of it is tied into the diversity of opinions and people in science, and that science is strengthened when we have a diverse group of people doing it and communicating about it and bringing their biases in. And so I think that episode does a really interesting job of talking about science, the process, and how it connects to humanity in general. And that kind of is the end cap of the episodes at large.
Yeah, so I guess I'm excited to finally put this out, and I really hope that you guys enjoy these episodes. We put a lot of work into it. We got to talk to some really cool people. So yeah, if you guys like it, then hopefully we will get to continue talking to really cool people who are out there on the ground doing things that maybe like we never even considered before.
Well, without further ado, I'll let you on to whichever episode you want to tackle first. So enjoy the ride.